Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's show. Want to welcome our guests. Today we have Debra, Kavana, Tamada. Please say hello to everyone.
Hello.
Hey y'all.
Hey everyone.
Happy Friday.
The crowd really loves you, ladies. They love you all. So today we're going to talk about the impact of childhood trauma on adult romantic relationship. And within this, some of the things that we can discuss will be attachment styles, trust issues, communication patterns, emotional intelligence, healing and growth. And if anyone has any questions about anything, any one of those subtopics, please feel free to, you know, type your questions, speak up, and we have a few seats available. I'm ready for you ladies to jump in. Tavana, you have the floor first.
Let Deborah go first because I'm doing something real quick.
Okay. Maddie joined the room. Hello, Maddie, and welcome. Deborah, Tamara, you had an interesting perspective for us as well as we were
Right, and she was
discussing.
here first,
Go
and I
ahead,
don't even know
Tamara.
what's happening. So let her go first.
Please tell us what you had to say about this.
Well, we had mentioned at the beginning about topic about childhood trauma and relationships. And for me, I was saying that I was raised pretty much in a household that was almost like cookie cutter. My parents were Panamanians. So, coming from another culture also is always a little bit where it's called Marianisma,
What is that?
the caretaker. And I just raised in that way where my parents didn't really fight. They had arguments. We were not involved in it. It was something that, we never really witnessed. Verbal disagreements were kept to a minimum. And there was always a lot of like religious things. We would pray, use the Bible to find solutions. That's just how I was raised. So for me, I've had the opposite, trying to find kind of some kind of like comparison when I have my relationships. So like
Mm.
twice married. So
So, what is the impact that you feel your upbringing, and it doesn't have to be a traumatic experience, but just that was your exemplar model, right? Seeing your
Right.
parents. What impact did it have on your relationships, good or bad?
I believe it had an impact that I ideally wanted things to be married to how things were with my parents. It was very difficult for me to be in a situation where I had a partner that I was unequally yoked, where I was taking more of the lead in the household, whether it was financially or emotionally, just making decisions, which where I grew up, my dad handled most of that. And just the, I would say arguments, maybe bickering back and forth, things that I'm not really good with arguing, and it was just in the situations that I've been in relationships where it's very different. So that was kind of like the impact. And it's still, we have to monitor and adjust. And I've just realized that what they had was very special and unique. And I've had to form my own types of expectations and relationships.
Hmm. Interesting. Questions, guys? Follow up, Tank, Deborah. And for those of you that have recently joined us, we're talking about the impact of childhood trauma on adult romantic relationships. Deborah.
So I was gonna ask Tamara a question really quickly.
Yeah.
Being that you never like seen any arguments or anything like that, like how did you handle like conflict resolution? If like did you take on how they handled it as far as in a positive manner, not showing it to like anyone, like your kids, anything like that? Or was it like how did you handle your conflict resolution?
My conflict resolution was I just kind of internalized everything. And I don't have children. So when I was just with my significant other, or even now in my certain situation, I have a tendency to hold things in. And then finally, when the balloon pops or the final straw, happens, I usually just kind of like implode. And it's not very good. And I've had to, with years, work on it. And it's just, I'm always still a work in progress, but it was not a very easy way for me dealing with it. I always took things personally, even if someone just raised their voice to me. And that's how it was with my parents. Like, we really didn't get like a lot of beating, like spankings and stuff. It was always like, they raise your voice, and I was immediately like a straight pin. So when I had a spouse, my significant other, yelling at me or screaming or even like, physically assaulting me, it was just kind of one of those things where I didn't know how to handle it. And I just kind of like internalized it until I actually needed help, and I reached out.
So even though it was like the cookie cutter experience that you had, there was still negative impacts from even being in that cookie cutter type of situation.
I agree. Yes, very much so. So
Yeah.
that would be a traumatic thing, as far as me as an adult, has gone through those experiences and not knowing how to deal with conflict resolution.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
And this question is, when we're talking about attachment styles, right? Do you agree, first off, that your childhood experiences, I won't label it as a trauma, but your childhood experiences impacted your adult relationships? Do you agree with that, Tamada?
I do, 100%.
Okay. And how did that influence the development of your attachment style as an adult? Were you like looking for your dad when you looked for a mate, or were there certain characteristics that you wanted to make sure this person had? And like, how can partners identify and work through issues that are rooted in childhood experiences?
I would say, I think, of course, I wanted someone that was like my father. I tried to mirror how my mother was as well. So yes, it is something that I would say I did try to mirror and look for. But when it comes to your relationships, like I was saying before, it's not ideal because they had their own type of relationship, how things work for them. And it took me a while to understand that he's not like going to be like my dad. And, I'm definitely not my mother. I'm my mother's child, but I don't have her personality. I'm a little bit spicier than she is. So it's just, I would say it was something that it's a work in progress, and it's a learning curve to just know that everyone has their own relationships the way they are. And we always try, if we compare ours to someone else, it's never really going to measure up.
Right.
I agree with her. I totally agree with her. And I think what she said was important to understand, right? Because, like she said, she's her mother's child, but she's a little spicier. So, somewhere her mom doesn't have her spice, right? And she probably doesn't have her mom's mellowness or whatever, would be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
And like she said, looking for someone that was sort of like her dad. But I think an important thing is that a lot of us don't know our parents outside of being our parents.
Right. Right.
Right. And at some point in your adulthood, you should have had a sit down with these two other adults who gave you life, and find out their stories and talk to them as if they're not your parents. And a lot of people have not done that. So a lot of people have this false idea of who their parents really are. Because I would bet that in 51 years of marriage, your mom could probably tell you some stuff about your daddy that you would be like, oh, you know what I'm saying? And vice versa, right? But because your father as her husband and your father as your father are not the same man. And I think a lot of times we as the children don't get that side of our parents to be able to see and not have this kind of fairy tale, you know what I'm saying?
Image of
Illusion
them.
of who
Right.
our parents
Right.
are.
So I just want to say something quickly. This was a topic that Nicole and I talked about this morning, but in reverse. When you mentioned how we don't know our parents, right? A lot of our parents don't really know us.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
and that, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, develops I wouldn't even go as far as saying a bipolar disorder, but it creates a completely different personality, right? Where we cannot disclose who we are or share our experiences with our parents. So we develop this persona of who we are. And then we have to put this mask on whenever we are all around our parents. So, I was
And
literally,
that's a
go ahead.
safety issue though. That's a safety issue,
Right.
right?
So
Even with your parents, there has not been a safe space created, and
created. Oh my God.
that probably happened very early on. Like if you're like, and we've talked about this before,
Mhm.
if your parents took your voice away from you very
Right.
early,
Yes. Yes.
you're not even going to talk to them. So
Right.
they took your voice away for other people, but they also took it away for
For
them.
them.
And
Yes.
so, and and you're absolutely right. So neither one of you don't know your parents, and your parents don't know you. Like people that know me and they see me with my dad, they're like, ain't no way you say that to your daddy. Ain't no
Oh my
way that
God.
you and your dad talk about that. And I'm like, listen, the way I talk to my best friend is the
Is
way
how
I
I
talk
talk
to
to your
my
parents.
daddy. Right? And
I believe
and
you.
sometimes he be like, I did not need to know that, right? But you
Right.
know what I'm saying? But that's the safety that I have with both of my parents, right? And so there's nothing that and on the other side, I also know their story. I know what my mom was like and went through as a young woman. I know you see what I'm saying? So I don't have this rosy color fairy tale of who my parents are. I know who they are.
That is very important. We just literally spoke about this. Nicole joined earlier. When she comes back, I will let her go into details because we often joke, we talk all the time and we talk to our parents. Like I even talk to her mom. She talks to my dad and we joke about the things that we share with our parents. And I'm talking about detailed experiences, positives, negatives, good or bad, because I don't feel like my dad should be surprised if something were to happen, right? If I'm going to do something, I tell him. And I think you made a very key point. A lot of times parents overemphasize compliance, right? Being respectful to adults. Say this, don't say that. But when we take that voice away, we also take it away from them. And when the child can't communicate with their own parents, they don't feel that safe space, and then they have to mask who they are or some of the things that they've done. Both D's. We have Debra here and we have D Miller. Tank, anyone? What do you have to say?
I was gonna go ahead and put my little 2 cents in for a second.
Yes.
And yes, Kavana, you are so right. You know, a lot of times we don't know our parents. We don't know their story. I would say there was a lot of moments growing up where I didn't know, in my younger years where I didn't know my mom. And I also didn't try to get to know her though, because of like the contentment that kind of lived in our relationship. But at a certain age, I definitely started like pushing her. And the funny thing is my mom is one of 5 girls. My grandmother had 5 girls. And so when my mom was 17, my grandmother, she got murdered. And so all of them, my mom was the oldest, excuse me, and all of them now were thrust into a world of uncertainty. And by the grace of God, my father's mother and father took them in.
Hmm.
But it's weird to explain because my father's stepfather is my mother's uncle. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how they was doing it back in the day down in the South. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I.
Doing a lot, Deborah.
They was doing a lot. So I'm gonna just say that.
Still
But
doing a lot.
Yeah.
girl, I look. It's when I say sometimes it's hard to understand and it's hard to explain to people. But
As soon as you said it, I got connected every dot.
yes, but because my father's stepfather, which is my mom's uncle, was married to my grandmother. He said, he was like, those are my brother's children. I'm not gonna let them be separated. We're gonna take in all 5 of them and keep them together. And they did exactly that. And that's why I say, like, when I think about relationships, for the short amount of time that I lived in the house with my grandmother, with my grandparents, I mimic what they taught me because when I was removed from that by my mother and what I saw, the vast difference in the realities of what she allowed and what my grandmother allowed, I knew I didn't want to follow her path. I knew I wanted to follow a path that would get me, at least somewhere close to what I was able to see with my grandparents. I wasn't looking for that exactly, but just to know that I would like to mirror this to be what my dynamic kind of looks like, because this feels good to me. Like that felt good to me growing up. And so I want to make sure that any relationship I get in, it feels good to me in that same way. That was a different story. But, going back to say, I got my mom to open up about who, like, how everything kind of happened when she was growing up, what type of teenager she was. And that is what actually changed our relationship to better it, was
Oh.
getting to know exactly who she was, because then I was able to understand who I was.
Mm.
And it sucks because I didn't get that on my dad's end, because, he was off on drugs most of my life. And in the last 3 years of his life, when he finally started to like get it together, get off drugs, get his life together, all of that, and we started to try to foster, then repair and foster a relationship, he wound up passing away. So that was a hard pill to swallow. Like,
Have you
I
ever
didn't even
dated
get to really know who he was outside of
that? Have you ever
being
dated someone that was on drugs?
not like, yeah, I did. Did I know? But I didn't know. Yes. And so when you say drugs, like, I don't consider like marijuana like
Like a
a
hard,
drug, like other drugs,
right?
like a
Like
hard
a
drug,
hard narcotic.
right? So yeah, but like as far as anything harder than that, I did, but I wasn't aware that he was on them either. And yes.
Okay, I
Okay, so I'm
asked that
sorry, my
question.
son was asking me a question.
Yeah, no, I asked that question because, tying back to, what impact did it have on your adult relationships? And I wanted to know, did you like, hey, I want to avoid someone that's on drugs, or,
Very
um,
much so.
okay,
Very much so. And that's why I said, when I did deal with someone, I didn't know that they were into that. And when I did find out, that was a deal breaker for me.
was it a trigger? Did it bring back memories?
No, it wasn't anything to that nature, because I am a very to each his own type of person. I've dealt with, at least at this point, I've dealt with, my feelings, my resentments, all of that I had regarding my father. So, you do what you do, but if it ain't for me, then I'm just gonna remove myself from the situation. I'm not putting anything there. I'm not going to judge you for what you do, but I just don't want any parts. But I did say specifically, like, I refuse to deal with anyone who is doing these type of things, because that's not something I want to mimic in my life. Like, I don't want that to be mimicked to my child. I don't want my child to experience any of that type of abandonment that I had to experience as a child. I
Okay,
don't want him to know what that feels like, because it didn't feel great.
right. And it doesn't mold who you are as a
I
parent.
think it's I think it's important also that, like what we're saying, tying it back into your childhood, you have to think about who our parents are in the stages of our life, right? They're our first teachers. We don't know anybody else but them, right? Or
Yep.
whoever, right, raised you. It might, if you weren't raised by your parents, if it was an aunt or uncle, whoever you were with from 0 to 6, those are your most impressionable years. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
what you are innately going to mimic. And as you get older, you can start to see and say, I don't like this, I don't like that. But until you get to that point, you're just mimicking, right? Because that's all you have to go off. Now, and that's why those first 5 years are so crucial, because that's all you have until you get to be school age. Now you're exposed to other children, other things, other stuff that might look different, right? And now it's like, well, how come Billy, you know what I'm saying? Mom is over here, or you see what I'm saying? You didn't even know that kind of stuff existed, right? Because it wasn't what you had. So it is normal for girls to seek out the characteristics that they see in their father. It's normal for boys to seek out the characteristics that they see in their mother, because that's that just all know. Now, and again, once you get to that certain age, if you didn't have a good mom, if you didn't have a good dad, then like Debra said, that's where you say, I want that, right? Like clear that I see that, but I don't want it, right? But it's all gonna always tie back into what happened and what was going on in your childhood. And this is why a lot of times you have to be able to recognize these things in your relationship and not just be like, oh, well, that's just who I am.
Right.
That's just who you are. But there's a reason why you are the way that you are.
Yes, you
And
are.
if you don't figure that out, it's gonna keep showing up.
Right. And then let me say this too, because you know how you said you're going to seek out what you see in your father. I didn't realize that I was doing that for so long. And I was always coming in contact with emotionally unavailable men. Right. But
Child.
you got to think of how in my childhood I spent so much time like really chasing for my father, looking for some type of emotion, looking for some type of, you know, something, having to pull it out of him, having like the moments I did see him and he was around, it was like pulling teeth to get any emotions out of him. And when I say I mimicked that in a relationship, so like as soon as you show any little bit of lack of concern or lack of emotion or anything like that, it's like, okay, what do I need to do to make you like, what can I do to make you show this? Or what can I, what do I have to change to make you like really see me again? Whatever, however. And when I realized that that was a pattern and that I was chasing after my dad in all of these situations, that's when I knew it was time to take a step back and really like be with myself and by myself. Luckily, that was in my early 20s. Like it was it was before my son came about. So by the time he came about in my later 20s at about 28, I had a way better understanding of like what I wanted, what I desired, what I deserved, and what I wanted to show him.
Mm.
And that's good. That's good that you caught that so early.
And how did you how did you get professional help? Or was it something that you just realized was a pattern and started to kind of figure out what to do to fix it? How did you realize that? Because you said you didn't realize that you were chasing after your dad at first. So how did that happen?
Like the realization came about in me and my sister really sitting down and having a conversation one day about the fact that she felt like I don't really show emotion, right? Something else. And there's that. You attract what you are. So, we were having this conversation and we got to talking about my dad. And in that she was telling me about some of the things she would do in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? And, we're sitting here and we're comparing stories and we're pinging off of each other. And I said to her, I said, Sissy, do you realize that we are literally replaying what we used to do with daddy in every last one of the relationships we just sat here and talked about? And that's where the realization happened. But in that moment also was where I said to myself, like, something's got to change because this is not what I want to see. You know what I'm saying? This is not what I want to be. Like, I want to be able to be open. I want to be able to share my emotions. I don't want to have to feel like it's no one can be safe. And I didn't get therapy. I didn't seek help. I really like, I was raised, my grandmother was, real and churchy. And we were raised in a Christian household. It's always been my staple, even though I don't follow Christianity anymore. But the things my grandmother instilled in me there never left me. And so I just really honed in on my relationship with God and, and myself, and knowing that to see better for myself, I needed to do better for myself. And I just really started making active changes. I'm a very strong-minded person. Like that's just one thing I know about myself. And so if I put my mind to it and I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to succeed at it because that's just who I am. And I took that same approach in changing, healing the trauma that I had been carrying for so long, and stepping into a place where I knew it started with me. So I had to start to love me. I had to start to cherish me. I had to start to desire me. I had to, all of those things had to come through me before I could look for it anywhere else. And that was my strength, knowing that if I can give it to myself, then I can ask for it from someone else. But if I can't give it to myself, then I shouldn't be asking.
That's really insightful. Like as you were talking, I think about the people who, especially in our culture, who'll say things like, well, when I was growing up, such and such happened to me and I'm fine. Or when I was growing up, my parents did this and I'm fine, but they're not. And every
Right.
relationship they have shows that they're not, but they think everybody else is the problem, and they never, they never really examine themselves and never really find out why is every relation, whether it's at work, my marriage, my, whatever, I just can't seem to succeed in that area of my life, but because it's them and they think they're fine because they've never really sat back and taken a look at why are things going this way for me. So especially in your 20s, I think that's huge for you to have figured that out.
Now, all of the work didn't happen in my 20s. Like there was some slip ups and there was some setbacks and there was some.
It's going to be a work in progress, right? Like we never
Right.
fully arrive. I mean, you have to continue
Right.
doing the work, but for you to even come to that realization at that young, I think is huge.
Right. Right. Well, thank you. And yeah, it was, introspection is everything. That's what I will say. Introspection is truly everything, because if you're not able to really look at who you are, what you do, what your flaws are, like where your faults lie, you're gonna be out here in the world acting like your sugar honey iced tea don't stink. And you might be real funky. You know what I'm saying? And so these are things that you just kind of got to be mindful of. Like my integrity, my morals, those are everything to me. So I'm going to move in a manner that allows me to sleep at night with exactly who I am, knowing exactly who I am, and knowing that at no point through my day was my intentions to hurt anyone. I didn't hurt anyone. You know what I'm saying? And if I did, again, it was never my intention. But also just, just being able to like really know, like there's gonna be moments where I'm gonna fall, I'm gonna slip, I'm gonna curse this person out, but I can still come back to being who I truly genuinely am, and knowing that the people who are meant to really see me and be near me and be around me, they're gonna find me.
So you aren't forcing relationships, basically what you're saying.
I will not.
Okay.
I will not. I am like, it is a running joke amongst my siblings that, I will walk away from anything, and I will. If I give you the opportunity to show me who you are. And I feel like that's something that, I feel like that's something that God put within me. I have the ability to really give people that rope and let them show me who they are. And the funny thing is, I've had a lot of men, more than women, but men say to me, like, you fooled me,
How's that?
and you weren't, like, what you presented yourself as is not really how you are. And that normally came after, right? You thought I was naive and you thought you could play with me. And so I let you think that so I could see exactly how far you were willing to take this. And then when you least expected it, meaning when my threshold was reached at the level of energy that I was going to give to this situation, I just kindly removed myself.
Mm.
And now you're wondering what happened. But truly, you really know what happened. You just weren't expecting that other shoe to drop. You didn't expect me to actually know who I was and understand who you were and who you thought you were trying to be, or who you were showing me, or who you thought you were showing me you were trying to be.
D, we
I
want to hear from
definitely
you.
will. I will let you, I will let you play. I will let you play. And I will sit in my mind like, I get you. I see where you at. See where you at. And it's more in a spirit type thing, because when God tells me to move, I move. When God tells me you can't stay here, I move. And that's because of the closeness and the relationship that I formed with him. When he tells me to walk away, I'm moving. I don't care what Peter, Paul, Thomas, Sally, nobody got to say.
That guides your decisions.
It guides my decisions. I listen to what comes through me, not what other people want me to do, not what other people want me to have or see from me, but what comes through me.
I want to hear from Montrese and D. Montrese is saying the movie It Ends With Us is a great movie that shows how unresolved children trauma can affect adulthood. And that comes from self-love and knowing who and whose you are. I've not seen that movie. It sounds like it's something good. I want to put it on my bucket list. And
Yeah, me neither. I haven't seen that.
Montrese, D, I would like to hear from you if you have experiences, D, to share with us. And we're talking about the impact of childhood, I should say childhood experiences on adult romantic relationship.
It's funny because I had a wonderful childhood. Nobody's parents are perfect. Nobody, but if I could do it all over again, I would have chose my same parents. I would have chose my same experiences. And I had a wonderful childhood. And as y'all were talking, I was thinking about, I think it was Kavana that might have said, just about how open your relationship is with your parents and things you can say to them. And I remember being a little girl and my friends looking at me like I was crazy because I would say to my mama, I don't like it that you said that to me. Why would you say that to me? And she would say, I'm sorry. What I meant was, and that back then, nobody here was doing that. We live in the South. It was sit down, shut up, whatever adults tell you to do, you do it, so on
Right.
and so forth. And so, that just wasn't, and I raise my kids the same way. And even now, as far as we've come, we still have a long way to go. I still have people that say, every once in a while, that's a little disrespectful, isn't it? No, because I allow my children to express themselves. With that being said, my husband, who also, he'll tell you I had a great childhood. He grew up well, but he grew up very differently than I did. His parents were good people, but his father he was a minister. He was a Baptist minister, and he was very rule with the iron fist kind of a person. And I remember when we got married, and my husband, in the early years, he would say something to me, and the tone of voice that he said it in, or what he said it in, I was like, who are you talking to? I don't roll like that. I have a very strong personality. I'm very sure of myself, and I just don't put up with a lot of, like, you're good. If you can't respect me, this is not going to be a thing. And I remember him saying, and it took years of work, but I remember him saying, that's just what I thought husbands did. Like, that's what I watched my dad do. His dad was his best friend. He's passed away now, and they lived in a great household, and that's just what he grew up with, and that's what he was used to. And I was like, hey, slow your roll. That is not happening. Like, who are you talking to? We're not doing that in here. And that caused a lot of issues in the very beginning, because in his eyes, I was just being disrespectful. Like, how are you talking back to your husband? Like, how do you, if I say something, and and it wasn't one of those male chauvinistic kind of things. It was just in his house. That's what they did. If his dad said something, no matter how his mom felt about it, that was the end of the story. That's what was going to happen. I didn't grow up that way. And so that caused some issues, to say the least, in the very beginning, but we had to work past that. And it's been 20 something years now, and we work past that, but that's hard. It's really hard because you were bringing two totally different lives, two totally different people, trying to combine that into one and being the best parents that you can be, the best spouse you can be. And that's a really hard shift when you grew up so differently,
Different.
trying to find
Yes.
about.
Mike, you said a key word is finding a balance. And I think a lot of times this was a challenge for me initially. My wife and I grew up completely different. And this just was my opinion. And I said this to her, that you have to stop viewing different as better or worse, right? Because the way you were brought up is just that, the way you were brought up. And because people did not do things that way does not mean that they're bad or they were raised wrong. And our experiences were just that, experiences. I commend my father for being very transparent with me and open with me, and allowing a space where we could communicate with him about anything. It took some time, but I kind of tried my hands with him. And after I said some things to him and I didn't get a whipping, I was like, okay, so he's serious. I can talk to him about anything. And it helped. So my dad is my best friend. We talk every single day, sometimes about 5 times a day, about everything. He's very intelligent. We have so many commonalities, and he was also a former math teacher. So I have someone that I can call and talk to about any and everything. And like Kavana said, that helps. I know a lot of people that really suppress who they are around their parents. And I don't know the impact of that. I just don't think that it's healthy when you cannot be yourself.
I can tell you the impact.
Yeah.
It's not healthy in any manner.
What it does is it causes you, first of all, that means that there's no authenticity present. That's the first thing, right? Because you're not being who you are. Mm-hmm. A mask. You're being what someone else expects you to be or whatever. You know what I mean? And so what it does is causes you to have to code switch all the time, right? So I was with someone who would not drink or curse in front of his mom. Good evening, sir. Mm-hmm. And caused the problem because he didn't want to drink and curse in front of his mom. He felt like I should not drink and curse in front of. I don't give a damn about your mama. Like I'm not about to. And if I want to go to
serious, Tamada?
If I want to have a drink at this dinner table, I'm ordering me a drink. Now, I don't know what you want me to. That's you. You thinking phony around your mama. I'm not about to do it.
Y'all, let me tell y'all. So my mama realized that I was always going to be exactly who I am.
Debra, hold on for a second. Nicole said that's disrespectful. What's disrespectful?
If that's their culture.
That I drank and cursed around his mama?
That's not disrespectful. That's you being you and respecting who you are.
Told to give me her. She said it, so I just want to make sure I'm tracking on what she's saying. Is that what she was saying? Nicole, is that what you were saying was disrespectful?
The cussing and
It is. I wouldn't curse around. Oh, that's you. And see again, here we go with perspective.
We want to share this so with others that cannot see what's being typed. Someone's saying you're going in and out, Kavana. That's why I started talking, because you were going in and out. I don't know if you moved to a different area or what happened.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very clear.
Yeah, so I think it's a matter of perception, right? And it's about how you grew up. If you grew up thinking that's disrespectful, you're going to probably think that that's. I never grew up like that. We could say whatever we wanted as children. You know what I'm saying? Because our voices were not taken. My children's voices were not taken. So to be with someone who expected me to not have a drink, to not say no dang on, no curse because his mother was around. Oh, baby, you got the wrong one. I'm sorry. This ain't gonna work. Because I'm not gonna not be who I am because you're being fake. Being fake, so you want me to be fake, and I wasn't willing to do that.
And did he use profanity at other times?
Yes.
Oh yeah, see, that's what and Nicole and I, we talked about that this morning.
And that's the thing.
He did not leave me, to answer your question. We were married for a very, very long time. So no, he did not leave me. But what he did do was say, you know what? I can't stop her. I can't control her. She's right. She gets to be who she is. So when his mom would come over, she already knew it was going to be a drink. And the funniest thing happened one time. We had a family gathering, and I had opened a bottle of wine, and guess who asked for some of the wine?
His mom.
His mama.
Mommy Dearest.
Okay.
Didn't see.
Okay. So again, it was all about everybody being fake and phony. Let's just everybody be who we are.
Tamada said her husband cussed when he was debating with her mom years ago, and she still brings it up with a scornful face.
Oh my gosh.
So she talked about how her parents came up, and I guess their religious beliefs, which I understand and respect that if that's
My
their religious
parents are
belief.
Jehovah's Witnesses too, so it's a totally different
Right.
cultural background.
Different,
Yes.
right.
They went
I
from
get that.
Catholic to being Jehovah's Witnesses, so it's completely different.
I
Right. And I think it's extremely important to really, like show your parents who you are. I was just gonna, give a funny story. And, this was back in my little younger days, but I had my apartment, I moved out at 17, never went back home. Right. But this was probably early 20s, had my apartment and my mom and everybody knows don't just pop up at my house, but she chose to just pop up at my house. And at that time I had yeah, I was there and I was smoking. I was
uh-oh.
smoking some stuff. And, she came in. I let her in though. And she came in and I continued what I was doing. And she was like, "You're not going to put that out?" And I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not." And I did. I said it with the utmost respect. "No, ma'am, I'm not." And she said, "What do you mean you're not?" I said, "Did you call me? Did you say, Deborah, I'm coming over so that I could prepare and know, like, okay, my mom's coming over. Let me, just, not do this just yet. I'm going to do it. She knows I'm going to do it, but I won't have to do it when she's walking in the door."
Right.
But you didn't call. You didn't respect my space. So now you're here. This is what I'm doing. I'm listening to my music. I'm vibing out and you are interrupting that vibe. And I'm not going to change that vibe for you in this moment,
Mm.
but I love you. And if you would like to stay, then you can. But if you choose not to, then I understand that as well. And I will see you tomorrow.
Yes.
And I feel like that is just 100% like really being who you are, being authentically who you are, and being that way with everyone. Not picking and choosing who you're going to really show yourself to, but showing yourself to everyone and letting them decide if they can handle you or not.
So it ties back to the premise of the entire podcast is what? Communication.
Yeah.
And why it is so important. So these are the things that people rarely talk about, but they should talk about. When you
Right.
talk about being around your parents, I remember being so shocked because, my parents, we talk about different things. We are, what is it called? Public displays of affection and things like that. I was a teenage father, so it's not like they looked at sex as taboo. My mom would let my son's mom come over and spend the night. My son was here, so what worse could happen? And so things when it came to being intimate and sex and sexuality, it was different. My in-laws were both ministers, and I remembered my wife was joking with me, and she poked at my stomach, calling me chubby, right? And I was like, okay, what about these thighs or something? And I just took my middle finger and touched her like hamstring, and her mom like got upset and said, "Oh, we don't do that here. We don't do that around here." And I was like, okay, I had to apologize. I'm in her house and that's not what they do. And I was like, oh, wow. I don't know exactly what it was.
So wait, you
They
couldn't
don't.
touch your woman's hamstring?
Yeah, I couldn't. I was like, okay. So I knew to not do that around them. And the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I had to become observant, and I I had never seen my sister-in-law and brother-in-law. I've never seen them kiss one another, and I know they celebrated like 29 years of marriage. I never saw my mother and father-in-law like, any public display of affection. Never seen them kiss or anything like that. And so it was just different. It's not, good or bad in my opinion, or better or worse. It was just different compared to being back home where, my family would, especially with their spouse, you might see somebody get a pat on the butt, a hug and kiss, or it's just different. So these are things that a lot of times I think we don't think about communicating, you know, like, hey, can we kiss in front of your parents? Can we hug in front of your parents? Can you sit on my lap in front of, around your parents? Things like that.
Wait, how? So before this was before you got married, or after?
This was, shoot, I'm trying to remember if we,
That matters because that's like I'm like you said like I understand churchy godly as whatever as you want to be ministry, but what you're not gonna do is tell me I can't touch my partner in your household. And like I mean, I probably wouldn't have grabbed the whole backside. That was a joke, but like I would have, I definitely would have, you know, grabbed a thigh, something like, look, this is me, this is us, and this is what we do, and
well, I wasn't
yeah,
going to
you
do it
got
in
to
your
see that
house.
sometime.
I
You got to see that
recognize,
sometime.
I recognize where we were. So I was like, you know what? She said that's not what they do. And when I thought about it, I had not seen anyone in their family, married couples, whatever, display any affection publicly. I'd never saw that. I've never seen anybody, you know, like hug and kiss. And I'm like, that's the way they do it. But, you know, I'm like, hey, that's just not how we get down. So when you come around my family, or you come to Charleston, you know, the expectations are different. There is no, okay, you go to that room, you have to go to that room. That's not how we are, because now you're living in denial, you know?
But did they respect that on the other end of the spectrum?
Well, that was never discussed with them, like what goes on when we go to Charleston or what happens around my family is just
Oh, so they never
understood.
came around.
Yeah, she did. I mean, like as far as like her parents would not know what happens when we travel to Charleston, you know?
Right, but what I'm saying is, so her parents never came to y'all side of the spectrum in order for you to be like, okay,
No, they
that's
came
what y'all
around
do,
like
but this is what
twice
we do.
for a funeral. I think there were like 2 funerals they came around my family.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
No, before going to her parents' house, and y'all never had a conversation about. So it sounds like you were doing things like that outside of her parents' house. I mean, like you were touchy feely, what have you. She never said to you, listen, when we go to my parents' house, don't be feeling up on me or don't touch me.
Right.
Or
She never said that. And so I was floored. I was shocked. I was like, oh man, but you know, I'm a person, I study human behavior, right? So I'm always aware. And I was like, the fact that her mom even noticed it was so casual. Like I was sitting at the table and we would always make jokes about me. Everybody knows I love to eat. Everybody knows that about me. So she was clowning around, calling me Tubby or something. And she poked like at my side or my tummy or something. So I was like, okay. And I'm seated. She was standing next to me. So I just took my middle finger and like poked by her hamstring, just like, you know, but my wife was an athlete. She, you know, played basketball, ran track. She lifted weights a lot, right? She ran a lot. She ran like a couple miles a day, every day at this time. Like she'd run like 3 or 4 miles a day. So I didn't grope her. I didn't touch her butt. I just poked at her leg, you know, and I never forgot that incident where her mom said that. I never forgot that.
So did
So
her mom say anything when she poked you in the tummy or in the side though?
no, she didn't. And so I guess that was appropriate or accepted, but me touching her thigh,
Oh yeah, no,
was not.
boo. Mm-mm.
So, but it's just different. So you have to understand
It
that
is different.
there's a
It is
different
different.
dynamic in different households, in different families, different expectations. So those things should be communicated, right?
Right.
So now I think about that with my kids, with my wife versus my older sons and his mom. Like I said, we were teenage parents and not trying to make my son hypersexual, but knowing that my oldest son, he was an attractive young man, you know, according to the little girls. He was a popular kid. He was spoiled. So, you know, he had little motorcycles at a young age, a cell phone. So, you know, he had girlfriends. But I spoke to him about, you know, being active and contraceptives and things like that. That was my approach. I wasn't in denial and just thinking that, oh, and I honestly think that, this is Nicole and I talked about this morning. Some parents really think that their children are virgins. Like they don't know that they're sexually active. So subconsciously they've built a persona, right, in the eyes of their parents. So the same way we don't know a side to our parents don't know a side to us. And because of that, we tend to behave as this persona and not the person that we are when we're around our parents. And I'm thankful that I'm not that way. Like anything that you see or hear about me, you can ask my dad, my mom, God bless before she passed away, my siblings, and they'll all tell you the same thing. So I think that gives a lot of emotional freedom, when you don't have to wear a mask. Montrese, how are you? And welcome.
Thank you. I'm well. How are y'all?
Doing well. Kim, hello. We have a few callers that called in. Ms. Laborde, hello and welcome. And today we are, for our listeners that are tuned in, we are talking about the impact of childhood experiences on adult romantic relationships. And we would just like to hear both some childhood experiences and the impact that it has had on your romantic relationships as an adult.
Okay. Well, my mom was a Jehovah's Witness, and my stepfather, who has been in my life since I was 2, was Baptist. So I grew up with a lot of confusion, I would say. Had good parents, but I study behavior as well. And like when I'm looking back, I also study my own behavior and my past behavior, and I have traced it back to things that I experienced growing up. And that childhood, how someone is brought up, is a very important factor. And I think we don't look at that enough when we are dating. And for instance, like I was married. I've been married twice. My first marriage was very violent. I got married when I was 17 because I was having, of course, and my mother did not, no sex before marriage. So I got married. But because he was so violent and because I never saw my stepfather put his hand on my mama, it was so foreign to me. I knew I didn't belong there. So I was divorced by the time I was 21. So fast forward to my dating experiences, I have found myself in the past giving people multiple chances if they are unfaithful. And I feel like I do that because of how many times I saw my mom forgive my stepdaddy. So it's like, it's normal. So I had to retrain myself and say, this is not normal. So it's just so important to find out how somebody grew up and find out what their beliefs were as a child, because it does affect us as adults.
Looking back on your childhood and knowing that your stepdad was unfaithful to your mom, would you have changed anything about the fact that you knew about that for all those times?
What I would have changed is my mom stayed until my sister and I were done with high school. And I think it did more damage than it did good because I never really.
How did you find out? Was it because of the arguing, and did you overhear something, or how did you know about it?
The arguing, people calling the house, it was known. My mama being upset, crying, it was known.
So it was blatant. It was just blatantly being done.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How did that affect your relationships?
Like I said, I felt like I forgave too much as I was dating when I should have left relationships. I didn't leave because, like I said, I felt like, oh, this is just what guys do. It's what my daddy did. My mama stayed, and I felt like it was normal. So I feel like if my mama had left, maybe stood up for herself, I wouldn't have stayed in so many relationships that I should not have been in for as long as I did.
I really don't think our mothers, women in general, really understand how vital it is in some of those moments when you have a young woman as a child, to show them, what it means to be strong and to stand up for yourself, because that's the one thing in the culture in which I was raised. Yeah, you can do that, but more than that, be like, don't you leave that man. You get what I'm saying? Like, don't you, you'll be all right. Y'all will make it through it, but don't you leave that man. Like, that's more of what I heard all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Not, not the positive of, girl, stand up for yourself
Right.
and do what's best for you.
Right.
So basically, seeing that for some people, I guess initially you feel like, okay, this is what I should do, you know?
Yes, I used to. I don't anymore. But I also think I had to experience that. So, like when I'm helping, I work in healthcare. So, when I'm helping my patients work through things, I can understand and I can talk to them and help them better because of my past experiences, childhood versus in adulthood.
Right. And that's why I said what I said about, I think it was D who had made mention of the fact that she would keep her same parents. That, she wouldn't change that. And I agree with that 100% only because, the journey that I've had in my life, it really brought me to who I am, to where I am. And I don't think if I would have had different parents, I would have been able to have the same experiences and the same, lessons and, just blessings and everything that I got to experience having the ones that I did. So yeah, though there was some rough times, some challenges, some heartaches, some setbacks, I wouldn't change what I was, brought here to do because in all of it, there's a lesson that we learn in order to be able to teach someone else in whatever capacity we do that.
Right.
I want to know, I had a couple of questions. Let me go through, right? Going back to what Montrese said, and we talked about trust issues. Hey, Trellis, how are you? Welcome. Chantel, hey, everybody. Hey, hey, hey. I'm not sure if you all took the time to go back over and look at our discussion topic. We're talking about the impact of childhood experiences on our adult romantic relationships. So one thing that I heard, well, I'm concerned about, right, are trust issues and communication patterns, right? And we're going to close out with healing and growth. We'll get to that part later. But with trust issues, I have a few questions and I want you all to think about it for a second and you can chime in. First is, how do trust issues manifest in adult relationships? What are some practical steps that individuals can take to rebuild trust with their partners? And how does mistrust impact intimacy, and what can couples do to overcome it? Again, how do trust issues manifest in adult romantic relationships? What are practical steps individuals can take to rebuild trust with their partners? And how does mistrust impact intimacy, and what can couples do to overcome it?
I don't think that the trust issues always necessarily come from the current partner that you're with. Like when I got married, I had been in a long-term relationship that had ended several years before I met my husband. That was very unhealthy, but it was my daughter's biological father. And because I had her when I was 17 and I grew up in a 2-parent household, both of my parents were together and I was determined she was going to have both of her parents. And so I hung in there for a lot longer than I should have. My parents weren't happy about me being with him because they saw how he was just how I was being treated and never put his hands on me, just out there with other girls, just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And so when I finally broke it off with him and realized that this isn't the life I wanted for my daughter, dated some other people. When I finally met my husband, he never did anything to make me not trust him, but I brought all of that baggage from a previous relationship. And I remember, when I didn't want to live together before we got married. We ended up building a house and moved in like 3 months before we actually got married. And he goes to the gym every day. And I remember, 8 o'clock would come around after work. Why are you at the gym so late? What are you doing? Going out and seeing if his car was there. And at some point I remember saying to myself, what are you doing? This is the person that you are planning to spend the rest of your, and I ended up telling him, I said, here's what I did. And he kind of looked at me crazy one day. Like, why would you do that? I was at the gym. Why would you drive over there? I told you I was at the gym, that I'd be home afterwards. And he understood, but to him, it was completely foreign. that anybody would do that. And at the time, I'm in my early mid-20s, and I said to him, "Oh, other girls have done it. You just don't know about it. I was just brave enough to tell you that I'm stalking you, you know?" So, but he really was like, "Dee, you are the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. I don't have time to be out here doing stuff. If I tell you that I'm doing something, that's what I'm doing." And I remember thinking, okay, and I just had to let it go. And it was really hard because I was determined that nobody was going to quote unquote make a fool of me again. That if something was going to happen, I was going to get in front of it. I was going to know that it was happening before it happened. And I couldn't live like that. But the trust issues weren't because of him. It was because of baggage that I brought in, and not from childhood, but from other relationships.
How did you overcome it?
Time. I just had to, I had to trust my husband. And I had to trust myself. And I had to say, this is the person that I, chose to spend the rest of my life with for a reason, for all the things, all the check boxes. Your pellet gun is not in here, baby. Mom is on a call. I don't know. I don't play with your pellet gun. Go, baby. I'm on a call. I'm sorry. So I had to trust myself and say, this person, I checked the boxes that I said I wanted to check, and you have to trust yourself. You have to trust that you made the right decision.
If I can be honest, I have to say with me, it is very hard to trust. And that doesn't come from my childhood. That comes from, like Dee just said, past relationships. As far as how do I overcome it, I have to tell myself that all men are not alike. But for right now, I'm working on myself. So I'm not actively dating because I know I do have a lot of trust issues and things that I have to work through.
I will say for me, it's really hard for me to open up. Like, I'm not so much of like where I don't trust, and I don't know. I never think like, is he out here cheating, or I be like, go, like, I'll see you when you come back. I don't never really think about those type of things, but my fear and trusting comes more from me just really opening up and showing you who I am genuinely and truly, and you with that's where my trust issues really lie.
Do you think you put up a wall, Deborah?
I'm sorry, I was getting a call. What'd you say?
I said, do you feel like you put up a wall?
So it's not that I put up a wall, but it's more or less like I give you me in little bits and pieces. Like, I give you a little of me, and I see what you do and how you handle that. And if I feel okay about it, I'll give you a little more, and I try to I'm not just jumping all in head first. Never, I've learned my lesson there, never doing that. But I will, like, give you like pieces of me, little tidbits to really allow you to see who I am and what I'm about. But it's at a caution. Like, I do, like, if I'm going to get serious with anyone, I do let them know, like, you're gonna have to be patient with me. I don't just let people walk in blindly, and I don't let them know, like, I'll tell you who you're dealing with, but in order for me to show you who you're dealing with, that's going to take a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So does it affect you being intimate when you don't trust a person?
Yeah.
Very much so. Because I like my home, right? That's my temple. And so if I take care of that, the last thing I want to do is allow any type of negative energy, anything like that, into this space of mine. So,
Right.
if there's things that's happening that make me feel like I can't trust you in those type of ways, then yes, it's going to affect how intimate I'm able to be. And when I say intimate, I don't just mean sexual. I mean like intimate in many different spaces that you would get, that intimacy. I can't do any, like, I kind of shut down. I have the tendency to just put it all off. You like, the minute you show me I really can't trust it, I'm probably going to shut it off. And then it's going to take everything to get it back. You get what I'm saying? So it's, it's, and that's even if I give you the opportunity to get it back. Because sometimes I am very much, let's burn this whole thing to the ground. I am that person. So, and those are things that I work on also, because I know there's going to be those challenges. There's going to be things that you can't just walk away from. But again, there are those certain deal breakers where I know for myself, yeah, I'm not staying in this, because if I can't even be intimate with you and feel safe here to do that, then there's no point in me being here.
And of course, I'm thinking about different ways of people being intimate and things like that. And if I don't trust a person, I don't even want to kiss them. So
Well, I'm not a kisser anyway, so that's a hard bargain anyway. But yes, that's a very big thing. Not kissing someone who you can't trust. So if you can't kiss them, you
do anything
can't
else.
go all the way.
Right. Definitely nothing special.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Right. When you don't trust the person. So, and we talk about, you know, experiences and of course, in childhood experiences, it doesn't have to come from our parents. It could be in past relationships, you know, and I think about that from a male's perspective as well, where I never realized how important trust was. And I always felt like it didn't matter if I don't trust you. If you not doing anything, why do you need me to trust you so much? Right? Because I'm going to do X, Y, Z. My focus was different beyond the emotional availability. I thought about being the provider, protector, and this is what being a husband or spouse is about. So I don't trust people, right? That's not a good thing. It's just from life experiences. I don't trust people. When they do what they're supposed to do, I'm shocked. When they're honest, I'm shocked. But if I want to be with a person and I like that person for reasons beyond that, that is what's most important. That is what comes first. So I was able to enter relationships, and I wouldn't say that there was distrust particularly aimed at that person. It's just that was a flawed character trait of mine where I just don't trust people. But Chantel, we want to hear from you. Tell us, do you think that some of your childhood experiences impacted your adult relationships?
For me, I would say absolutely. For a period of time, my dad raised me and my two other siblings until he battled a drug addiction. And because he didn't want us to see that, he allowed my mom to get custody of us. And when she, gained custody, that was the first time that we didn't understand. Because when I was raised in the country, even though it was not healthy, based off some of the things that, I saw, I still felt like there was a level of love, of like protection and caring that, they gave us. But when I got to my mom, it was a abuse, something that was very strange. It was not love. There was no love. We were physically, mentally, emotionally abused. And even though my dad and my stepdad showed me how a man was supposed to treat, a woman, I always kind of went back to what my mom showed me. And what it did was set me up to always look to be validated from someone, because she never validated us. But I mean, now that I grew up and went to therapy and understand that my mom was battling her own issues and
Right.
she just didn't have the tools, like I'm not
Angry with her.
upset with her no more. I don't hold a grudge. I don't hold anything against her. But because unfortunately she did not find the tools, it did cause, her children to kind of make decisions from choices that they had that just, that affected us, especially within our relationship. Now, for me now, with me being in therapy, I kind of understand why I probably approach relationships the way I did at one point and how I should be, looking at relationships now. So when it comes to the trust issue, no, I'm not going to be intimate on no level with anybody I don't trust, right? But I've learned now that I trust myself enough now to use my discernment to watch who I'm bringing into my life. So I pay attention to, red flags. It could be within a friendship. It can be, someone who would be interested in dating. Like I pay more attention to who they really are versus what they are saying about me. Cause that was one of my issues. Like I would pay attention to what men was saying about me, which was all the things I wanted to hear, but the things that they were telling me about them, I didn't pay attention to. So when things went left or when things didn't go right, I felt hurt because I'm thinking, well, you said I was this type of person, but then I didn't pay attention to what they were telling me. So now when it comes to relationships and trust, I trust everybody. This is going to sound weird. I trust everybody until you give me a reason not to trust you. Because I trust myself to know that when you give me the reason to trust you no more, I will remove myself. And that's just where I'm at now.
I think that's a great approach. It's like, let's be positive, right? Until something bad happens. Because if we think negatively the entire time, it has the same impact on us. It has the same level of stress as something really occurring. It'll have the same impact on our brain and our physical and mental health if we're always thinking negatively and thinking something is wrong. So I'd rather be shocked once to find out it did happen to constantly think negatively,
Exactly.
Right. And what we don't realize is our biggest fears is what we normally manifest in a relationship. So if that's where your focus is, like what's gonna go wrong here, something's always going to go wrong.
Exactly. So I don't fear you hurting me until you unfortunately did it. Until you unfortunately did it. So I think now I just kind of look at everything. I try to be as positive. I'm not so positive till I'm lost into, positive vibes only. No, like I pay attention to red flags, like people show you. Unfortunately, I think what happens is we kind of, instead of we pay attention to the person, we pay attention to how we're treating the person. This is what I noticed about me. I saw what people did to other people, but I was thinking they're not going to do that to me because I'm giving them this. And because I'm giving them that, they're going to give it back to me. So I just pay attention to how people treat individuals. I try to be empathetic because you could have been a nasty person at one point in your life, but maybe you realized that you were unhealthy and you were toxic and got the help that you need to be a better person. So I try my best to give everybody that space or that grace, trusting them, but I'm not no fool either. You see what I'm saying? So that's just how that way I kind of go about it now.
I want to mention something right quick. When we talked about having to project or mask when we're around certain people, parents, pastors, influential people, or people that we show respect for because we don't want them to see a side of us, right? Are any of you familiar with the 7 me's that I am? Has anyone ever heard from that before?
No, but I want to hear about it because it sounds interesting for real.
So
I was just about to say the same thing.
and I was expecting maybe D because I knew she worked in education. So I do a lot of research and attend workshops and PDs because working in education, I try to be the best that I can. And outside of education, I'm working on my communication with people. So this guy, Dave Weber, he's an author and he wrote a book called Sticks and Stones. And what he talks about is as kids, we heard sticks and stones may break our bones, but what words will never hurt us,
Words
which is
will
the
never hurt us.
biggest lie ever told, right?
The biggest lie
Because
ever told.
you can get hit with sticks and stones. Those wounds heal. But I remember, of course, I dealt with my dad being on drugs. And one of my best friend, he asked this guy if he could have 50 cents. The guy thought it was me. And he turned to me and he said, don't be asking a grown man for money. If you get your daddy off them drugs, you would have 50 cents. And I'm saying to myself, I don't know this guy. I just came down from Boston to visit my daddy, and I'm walking down with my best friend, and this guy said that to me. He said, if you get your daddy off them drugs, you would have 50 cents. And I'm probably 11 or 12 years old, right? And those words went into my chest and felt like it pulled my heart out. And my friend felt so bad. He like, oh man. He was just being apologetic. He never told a guy that it was him that asked for the money. He didn't say a word. And at 11 years old, man, I wanted to do something to that guy really, really bad. So I've always been conscious about what I say to children because words hurt and they remember those things. But we also had to learn about what he coined. It's called the 7 me's that I am, right? And when I say these 7, I want you all to think for a second about the 7 me's, right? The first is the me I think I am, right? And how many of us think a certain way about ourselves and we later find out that others don't think that way, right? But it's the me I think I am. The second is the me others see that we can't control. We probably shouldn't worry about it, but that me exists. It's the me that others see. The third is the me I used to be. That's the one that haunts so many of us. The me I used to be. There is the me I want to be. We all have a me that we aspire. The me others try to make me. That's usually a parent, a spouse, a child, someone close to us. The me I try to project. And finally, the me I really am. And he says that 20% of people have insight into themselves and 80% don't. They don't know who they really are. So again, is the me I think I am, the me others see, the me I used to be, the me I want to be, the me others try to make me, the me I try to project, and then the me that I really am. And to just think about that. So we have 7 me's inside of ourselves. And when we're communicating with others, they have 7, right? So this is why communication is so important. And people have to know your text, your tone, and you don't know which me they're communicating with because when you meet someone, you approach that person and you're talking to them, right? If I talk to an ex-girlfriend, if I speak to an ex-girlfriend, chances are I'm talking to the me they used to be because that's who I know, right? And if we had a bad relationship, that's going to have an impact on how we communicate. I'm probably talking to the me that they used to be and the person that others see. It's how I see that person. They may have changed. They could be a completely different person altogether, but all I can see is who they used to be. So we have to think about that when we communicate with others and the pressures that we put on people. And I took this PD when I thought about communicating with children. And a lot of times in administration now, we treat kids by who they used to be. They got in trouble in the 6th grade and we're still holding that over their head as a junior in high school. Or we're trying to make them out to be someone else. We want to mold these kids. We think that we can make them perfect citizens. And then it's to me that people try to project. That's something that, people have a persona. Kids want to be cool. They want to be this person. And I just wanted to mention that to give us a little time to think about it and reflect on that. And welcome,
That was actually really good.
Hook, welcome in. I'm not sure if he's able to join our room. And I really want to take the time to tell you all, I really, really enjoyed you all ladies. Oh, Hook is here with us. Today, Hook, we're just talking about the impact of childhood experiences on adult romantic relationships.
Okay.
And the ladies have shared a lot with us. The most interesting perspective for our late listeners, Tamada started it off with us and she talked about being from a different culture and her parents having, different beliefs and religious backgrounds. And it was like a fairy tale relationship to her and how that is what she kind of expected. and the first time she encountered someone that was like verbally abusive or a man that was not able to be a provider and protector in the household, but she had to like pay the majority of the bills, it was overwhelming and kind of shocking. And of course, others shared the effects of just experiences. And when we say childhood experiences, it doesn't have to be with their parents, from past relationships as a teen, and how it could develop trust issues and other challenges. So what do you have for us, man?
Really, all I have to say about that is, I know with me growing up, I grew up in a single parent home, just me, my mom, my siblings. So obviously I didn't grow up in a household where, she didn't have like a stable relationship. You know what I mean? So I didn't have, and I guess an in-home relationship to really think about or emulate.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, even when like my brother and my older cousins would talk to me about girls, it was, it was mostly how many girlfriends you got, or, it was never, this is how you treat a woman, or this is how you respect a woman, or this is what you do. When it was mostly about physical, you know what I'm saying? Like, how many girlfriends you got? When I got older, ask me if I had sex, all stuff like that. But no, I didn't have an actual relationship that I can look to growing up, that I can actually, try to follow. I mean, even like the people in my, like, and I come from a large family, but even the marriages in my family, they weren't, I mean, they didn't really last, or it wasn't like a long lasting relationship. And I experienced, I remember just things about infidelity, something about this person cheating on that person, or this person separating from that person but never getting a divorce. So 30 years later they still married but ain't been together in decades. You know what I'm saying? So I did. So obviously, when I started like dating and whatever, I only emulated what I knew, is trying to get as many girls as possible, or, trying to sleep with that person, sleep with this person, thinking that was what men were supposed to do. But it wasn't until I got older, at some point that stuff gets old, man. And, it's like, you need something more stable, you know what I'm saying? And that's one of the reasons I waited as late as I did to get married. And I'm actually glad I did, because certainly would have missed out had I not, met my wife and married her. But there are a lot of things I had to unlearn. Just how you treat women, how you talk to women, how like my daughters never see us argue. You know what I'm saying? So I want to show them that this is what a stable relationship looks like. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, a lot of my like older family members, they be like, when they arguing and stuff, they mistake that for love, talking about like, well, if you don't argue, you don't love each other. Nah, that's toxic. Is I don't know what. Like, it's like you don't have to argue there are other ways you can show emotion. So those are things I had to learn, and really it's all self-taught, and it's sad that it took me 40 plus years to even realize, you know what I'm saying? So my job now is to show my daughters, I got a 23-year-old nephew, soon to be 23. I'm just showing them like, okay, this is how you treat people. This is these are your expectations, and this is what a healthy relationship really looks like.
Hook, how did you know when you were ready? You had to unlearn all that stuff. You didn't really see examples of healthy relationships. And at what point did you decide, okay, I think I'm ready. I can do this now?
Because no matter what conquests I obtained, like being with different people, like I wasn't whole. I wasn't happy. It was just, something to do just for and not, I never bragged about doing anything, but it was just something to do, that just to, what I mean? I guess just to feel like I accomplished something, you know what I'm saying? So, but even with all that going on, I wasn't happy. Like, and that, I think that's probably where a lot of my depression actually stemmed from, because I ended up seeking therapy, years later. But, I, go out, do these things and pretty much do anything I wanted to. But I was, at the end of the day, man, I go home and I'd just be miserable. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd cry to myself, or I feel bad about if I did something that I feel hurt somebody, it would hurt me. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, you know, I could have handled that a different way. I didn't have to do that person like that. So I knew that eventually something had to change. But by that point, you know, I'm still fearful because I'm like, you know, kind of think about karma, like it's something is all going to come back and get me. But I realized that probably in my mid to late 30s, but I knew something had to change, but it wasn't really until I met my wife that I realized what I needed to do.
And then something else you said, so your daughters never see you argue. Do they see the two of you disagree?
Yeah. We don't hide anything from them. So it's not like, you know, we wait until we go to bed to argue or anything. It's more so like we sit at the dinner table, we'll have conversations, and there've been things like my daughters will say something about talk about their day, and my wife would handle it one way, and then I would handle it completely differently. But yeah, it's simply agreeing to disagree. So they see us not necessarily agreeing everything, but so they know we don't have a perfect relationship. But one thing they cannot say is that they've ever seen us argue or me raise my voice or her call me out of my name or anything like that. So they've never experienced any of those things.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like, when you were in that phase, sometimes I don't think we realize that when we're doing like when we're in that phase in our life where we're just out here doing stuff for no reason and going home and feeling miserable, like part of that is really you're doing it just to feel. You get what I'm saying? Just to
Absolutely.
feel something, anything sometimes.
I agree with you 110%. And to go out and do those things and still not feel whole and not feel anything, it was, being younger, you just want to, like, I just wanted to be in the conversation. So when my friends and family are talking about the things they did or the people they've been with, you know what I'm saying? I just wanted to be able to contribute to that, to have something to add. But that's all BS. Like
Peer
all those
pressure.
things are for the wrong reasons. Peer pressure. You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't doing it necessarily because I'm not saying I didn't enjoy doing it, but it wasn't me. It was, I realizing now I guess I'm really a very monogamous person. Like I would prefer to be with one person. I prefer to
Mm-hmm.
have a meaningful relationship. I prefer to do those things, but the pressure of it all was saying that I had to do, I guess, do
Multiple.
exactly. And those things didn't come naturally to me, but I adjusted. But I mean, the only person that ended up hurting was myself.
We have like kind of like parallel stories. I think that I was that person, but for some reason, no one believed me when I said that. And I was actually shy. I had severe anxiety. I was afraid to talk because my grandfather uh, terrorized and antagonized me. And as a kid, I had to literally count to 3 and make a fist before I would speak to him. That's how frightened I was. But because I worked so hard to be able to speak to him, when I was able to talk to him, I wasn't afraid of anybody else. It's like if I can speak up or speak to my granddad, I can talk to anybody. And then it it built my confidence, right? And now, because of my upbringing, we grew up around the boys. The girls were in the house doing girl stuff. The boys were outside. As soon as you got breakfast, you went outside and did something. And then in the summers, you want to talk to girls who's visiting from New York in the summer. There's always somebody coming down south to see their granddad or uncle or staying for the summer. And it was a lot of pressure on having multiple girlfriends and doing different things. And I was like you, I really didn't care about that. I wanted to be with one person, but my cousins and everybody else had 3, 4, 5 girlfriends. So I'm thinking that was normal. And for me, I grew up with my father for a period of time. I grew up with my dad, and I shared this a lot, that I would get up in the mornings, man. My dad gave me a lot of freedom. So I didn't have to like ask permission, but I would always go to his room and tell him, "Hey dad, I'll be back," or "Hey, I'm going here." And I would always see between 1 to 3 women in his bed.
Oh wow.
And we never talked about
Wow,
it.
that's crazy.
So I just thought it was normal. I
At the
really thought it
same
was normal.
time?
Yeah, every day.
Yeah, at the same damn time. Okay.
And these women were cousins, siblings. Yeah, it was so the life that I saw wasn't even made for TV. People wouldn't believe it if they didn't see it firsthand. They would never believe it. So that's how I grew up. I was exposed to a lot. And my dad had a crowd at the house every night. Everybody came over to hang out and get high. So there would be like 5 to 6 of his main men there every night and up to maybe 10 women.
So in your adult life, so now you have a different relationship with your dad, and you said you feel like you can talk to him about anything. Have you ever addressed that with him?
Oh, we talk about that all the time. All the time. And I mean, like he knew, like I knew what was going on. I used to peek under the door. I had my homeboys wanting to spend the night because you can get a live porn show. Like you just tiptoe and peek under my dad's room door and you can see some things. And at night when I would be taking a bath, I can recall women having to use the bathroom. And I guess we had a, 2 bath, one in my dad's room and then, and we had a main bathroom. So I remember being in the tub and someone having to use the restroom because my dad's bathroom was occupied. They would come to our bathroom, right? And these women would, they're mothers. They're getting high, having a good time, but they're still mothers, right? So they would, are you okay? And, show concern and close the blind. And I remember peeking back, looking through the blind because I'm looking, you sitting on the toilet, I'm peeking at a butt and I'm in the 3rd grade, 2nd grade. But I remember this lady, man, that is funny. And she kept like closing the blind and she went to tell my daddy on me. And I guess he acted like he was supposed to be getting on me. And he came in there and he was just laughing the whole time. And, I told him, yeah, I was looking, and I told my boys what I saw and what it was like. So now everybody wanted to spend the night at our crib, at our house. If my dad left, I knew all the porn tapes were.
But Koshon, I hear you talking about it now, and it's, like some things that we've been through, you can kind of be like, dang, I went through that. But that's so traumatizing. You see what I'm saying? Like,
and at the time, I didn't realize, let me tell you what happened. And I really didn't realize until I got older and I realized when I moved to Boston, I realized how hypersexual I was. Because in elementary school, I remember going on a field trip in the 3rd grade and sitting next to a girl and she put her hand in my pants and I had my hand in her pants throughout the whole movie.
elementary?
In 3rd grade.
What?
3rd grade. That's God's honest truth. 3rd grade. And when I moved to Boston after the 4th grade, like I was abused in the 4th grade. We were friends now and joke about it. I had about 6 girls telephone number in the 4th grade and I would call them. I mean, I didn't have any transportation. I couldn't get to their homes, but that was normal for me. Like Hook said, this was normal. I just felt like every pretty girl or every girl that I liked, I was supposed to approach them. I would get their telephone number. I would call after school. I would talk to them and I just thought it was normal. And then when I moved to Boston, we moved out into a suburban area. And it was like kids were really kids there, right? And when I'm talking about sex and kissing, they're looking at me like I'm on one of those ABC after school specials, like, ew.
Yeah.
Because they felt like girls are still yucky and we
Right.
want to throw out Nerf football and get a mongoose bicycle with pegs. That's all the boys wanted to do.
Koshon, not to interrupt you. So
Go
when
ahead.
you speak to your dad about it now,
Right.
is it speaking to him more in a like joking manner or really like saying like, Dad, like this is what you exposed me to and this what took place and this what caused me to blah, 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 blah. Cause it's not placing blame, but to be honest with you all, as a mother of 6 beautiful children, unfortunately, I had to apologize to my children because my brokenness of wanting to be validated and loved by men
caused them to have different fathers and they saw different lifestyles. And what I had to do was humble myself. And what I had to do is literally strip myself in front of my kids and apologize for putting them in positions to see different lifestyles that they did not ask for, because they didn't ask to be here. And they did not ask for me to bring them into this brokenness because I refused to heal myself. And what I do understand is that parents, like our parents, grew up in a time. And like I was just speaking to someone today about it. The reason why I have empathy, like therapy is teaching me a whole lot. Like I even now is empathizing towards men who have been absent in their own children's lives because I understand it comes from trauma. But what I do believe that as a parent, because I can hold myself accountable and tell my kids I'm sorry for not identifying my brokenness in time where you all could have seen a healthy parent and didn't have to experience some of these things that you all went through. I apologize. And my kids have had, you know, these open conversations with me on things that they saw, you know, what men have said, or conversations they heard me held that they felt was traumatizing, just listening to it. So when you have these conversations with your dad, have you ever been straight up with him? Like, yo, bro, like you real life did some stuff to me that was not funny. You thought it was funny then, but now that I know it wasn't funny, it's not to make him feel bad, but to let him know the role that he played in you being this hypersexual kid at a certain age. You see what I'm saying? And because you was hypersexual, you could have definitely like uh, your trauma, you could have spilled onto somebody else kid who just was trying to be a kid. You
Just
understand
trying
what
to
I'm
be
saying?
cool. I never said it in that way. I just identified like this is what happened because there were a multitude of things. Like I talk to my cousins now about how awful we were as kids. Like we literally, and we're just being transparent. I remember being again in elementary school and my cousins asking me if I've had an orgasm, right? And you got to go in the bathroom with the Vaseline and prove yourself.
And
So,
you see that, like, and you're in elementary school. Like, I have
yep.
my baby boy is in middle school, 6th grade. Like, I want him to be a kid. And that's so heartbreaking to know, like, that was your experience. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
I'm a firm believer of if you can hold your parents accountable, like, I just am a firm believer of making sure that parents know what they have done is not to make them feel bad, but I am just learning that it's important as parents to hold ourselves accountable, because if our children can see see us holding ourselves accountable for being, excuse me, a fuck up when we weren't, guess what? They're most likely are going to look at life totally different, and my children do. And I know that it's only because I was able to say, nah, I was wrong, y'all.
I just
Mommy was
didn't see anything
broken.
wrong with it.
Yeah, because you didn't
In
know, right? Because that
hindsight,
seemed to be the normal.
yeah,
But
that was all I saw. Like that's it. That's all I saw every single night. I'm not talking about an event that occurred once or twice. I'm saying every single night, this is what it was. Our house was the hangout spot. Everybody's coming over. All the women are there. People are coming to get high. They're hanging out, you know. So I mean, I didn't see the impact because again, I was a superb student. I'm in a magnet school, physically healthy, and that's all that I knew. So I didn't have a reference, right?
when you got older,
So,
you knew it was not normal. And all I'm asking is, did you hold your daddy accountable with no smile on your face that what you thought was normal at one point was not normal, and he knows that?
No, because I thought that something was wrong with the kids in Boston. I'm like, man, y'all missing out. Y'all don't know what
I was just about to say,
yeah.
so wait, I was just about to say, so when you got to Boston, right?
Uh-huh.
And you are this one way and these kids are this other way. I want to know how that, like, how did you transition into that and what did you start? Like, what did you do in order to, like, because I can only, like, I can see that going wrong in so many ways, right? But how, like, how did you handle that difference in reality at such a young age?
Well, I became a kid again. I really loved being there, and I didn't realize how much of my childhood I was missing out on until I got there. So now I'm in Boston with these, like I said, the kids are kids. So just to give a brief comparison, when I'm in living with my dad in middle school, everybody's like cuddled up with somebody. You're trying to find a girl or whatever, and you know we're all friends. We're talking, right? But when I got to Boston in middle school, we played what they called wall ball. All of the boys are throwing a tennis ball against the wall. We're racing. We're playing with a Nerf football. We're sweaty. We're running and playing in the snow. We're being kids. Now I want a remote control car for Christmas like everyone else has. You know, it's like I want to be a kid again. I never realized how much of my childhood I missed out on. And then when I came back, it was the same thing all over again. Everybody has a girlfriend. You're trying to sneak over to somebody's house. You jump in windows. You're riding a bicycle. So I looked at it as just cultural diversity. They're just different, right? And
But
then,
what I'm, I, what
but
I'm,
as I got older, I never said, hey, you're the reason I'm like this. Because before I got to that point, I just like girls, man. I was literally in preschool. When the girls took a nap, I would get up and touch their butts on the cart in preschool.
man, cool. Like, listen,
I know that was crazy,
let me
right?
say this to you,
Nothing to
bro.
be
Like,
proud of.
no, I know you're not proud of it, but and guess what? I appreciate you telling your story because so many adults have this story, but they're afraid to
Right.
speak about it because they may think that people will review them as a pervert. But what had happened was somebody took your innocence away from you, and
Right.
that's the part that's heartbreaking. What I'm saying to you is, even when you went to Boston, what happened was the only reason why you were able to be a kid for that brief moment is because none of the other kids condoned
Had been
the behavior
exposed
that you
to,
were doing.
right.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm
So
so
if
sorry,
you were
man.
on the same level, you would have continued. But when you came back, it was the same thing. And the thing is, I feel,
We're
I
down to
hate.
30 seconds. I hate this is the fastest 2 hours in the world.
Can I say this real quick?
Yeah, please do. We down to
What
30
bothers
seconds.
what bothers me? Okay, your father, he just didn't hurt you. He hurt, like, say that you grew up and you had, cheated on girlfriends